So Katerina, it's great to finally have you here. It's been a long, long time coming. But what I wanted to speak to you about, and you particularly, is the role that communications has, or the UN Habitat Communication Strategy, and how that's changed over the last few years, particularly with your involvement.
I think communication is a very important element of anything you do. As I always say, communication is a bridge. It's not the end goal, and it's not something just you do on the sidelines. It's really a bridge that is trying to connect what you are trying to do, what you have, to the goals that you have. So we are trying to bridge and help you to really achieve the goals. So that's why it is important, and communication should really be important in everything you do. You don't do just plan something and then, okay, let's see how we communicate about it. No, you need to understand, to achieve your goals, who do you need to talk to, who is your audience, what do you want that audience to know about your work, what do you want that audience to do after they hear about you and know about your work. So that's why who, how, and what now matters so much. And this is mainly the framework that I'm trying to use in UN Habitat. It's the same framework that UN is using for communications. We are trying to adapt it to UN Habitat to talk specifically about urban development, sustainable urban development, cities, why it matters, what is important, and what you can do to help cities become more active, to improve life in the cities and make it better for everyone.
And I mean, it must be quite a difficult message to convey, because I suppose you've got three target audiences. You've got the public sector, you've got private sector, but also the general public. So how do you, in any way, shape or form, are able to get a all-encompassing message to all three of them, or do you focus on each individual sector?
Yes, I think the most important thing in communication is really to get your audience. The better you understand your audience, the better you target, the better you imagine your audience, the better would be the result of your work. So in that case, yes, we have a very complex mandate, and we are a very complex UN agency, so there are a lot of things that are involved. But I would say, yes, for us, it's the three layers of audiences that are important. First of all, because UN Habitat is an agency, it is a UN agency that was established after 1976. There was a Habitat 1 conference, a big Habitat 1 conference in Vancouver that talked about human settlements and the importance of human settlements and the importance of housing. So after 1976, Habitat was established by the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations as an agency. At that time, it was not an agency; it was just a center that looked at human settlements and the importance of human settlements. Then later, it developed into a program and it was upgraded. But it was important at that time. The leaders realized that human settlements, cities, are important, and we were mandated to look after the cities, to create environmentally and socially sustainable cities and human settlements. And that's the mandate that we have. But it is quite technical. It is very hard to, even for people in the UN, to understand it. And when you are trying to break it and make it understandable to the audiences, to a more general public, it is even more difficult. So that's why for us, we kind of broke down our audience into three bigger groups. On the one level, we do need to talk to policymakers, to the governments, because UN Habitat does normative legislative work on shaping housing policies, urban development policies, and we do need governments to understand why it is important, what they need to do to make cities and human settlements better for people. So there is a set of messages that is addressing the governments. Then on the second layer, we also need to talk to urban planners, architects, because these are the people who would be implementing those policies. They would be developing designs of buildings, they would be building housing, they would be putting those policies into action. So it is important they understand what needs to be done, what is UN Habitat, what we do, and why it is important. So that's the second big group of people. And the third one is general public. And this is an audience that we almost never really tapped into, because it's very difficult. Even for the policymakers and specialists, professionals, it is very difficult to understand what we do. And if we talk to the general public, it would be even lost. And what is the difference between UN Habitat and other UN agencies, and the very complicated structure of different agencies? But I think that is really important for us really to talk to this audience now, because more and more people, we have more and more people. We have the growing population. We have younger generation of people who don't necessarily even have any idea what is, why urban planning is important, what is sustainability, even explaining some basic concepts. Or for example, we're talking about the compact neighborhoods, but nobody knows what is a compact neighborhood, why it is important, what we need to do with it. So for us, that's one of the biggest tasks that we need to do, really, to explain it to people. We have very technical things that we are trying to convey to the audience. What we are trying to do now is to simplify it a little bit, make it simpler and more understandable, and put it into 3 bigger groups. One for the policymakers and decision makers, one for the professionals, and third for the generic public. What we are trying to do is we are putting together, we've picked 5 topics that we are going to focus on. One is housing, which is a very important element of cities and human settlements. Then climate action, urban climate action, what you need to do in cities to address climate change. Then we call it localization of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So those are the goals that were adopted in 2016 to promote sustainable development, and how they need to be implemented in cities to meet the targets that are set for 2030. So that's the third big area. And number 4, it's urban resilience. So it's human settlements and cities, how to reconstruct them after natural disasters and conflicts. And the 5th one is urban finance, how to finance development of cities and human settlements. So those are the 5 broader topics that we identified that we need to communicate about. And we are developing a set of messages for each of these streams. And each set of messages, so a set of messaging that is for the high-level decision makers, and a set of messages to really explain it to the general public. And to the general public, these are more like explanatory things. What are SDGs? What are sustainable cities? What is sustainability? What is resilience? Explaining some basic terms and giving some examples, or showing some examples of how. And then what we are doing, we haven't done it yet, but this is what I'm trying to do, what I want to do. So we have developed these messages, we have them, and what we want to do is we are trying to use them now on social media, testing how the public is engaging with them, whether they're understanding, and also doing some interviews with people, with the groups, and saying, well, do you understand what we mean? Collecting feedback from them, and then based on that feedback, we then want to adjust those messages. If they're not understandable, if people don't know what exactly we are talking about, we have a chance to really adjust and make it more clear to them, so it is becoming more helpful for the general public. But I think our priority now is really try to target more generic audiences, people who not necessarily know or have any experience in urban planning, development, decision-making, policy-making, to make it more educational and to really educate the people about that.
So authenticity is key, and you've mentioned a lot of different groups of individuals, personas, and sector organizations that you're communicating with, but some people say that the younger generation are being almost left out when it comes to communications within the UN and just general corporate strategy in general. But what is it the UN are doing at the moment to attract younger people?
It is important to engage with young people, simply because our mandate is really to create socially and environmentally sustainable cities for now and future generations. And young people are the future generation. So if we don't involve them, how would they be holding and how they will have ownership of these things? So that's why we really want them to be part of it and to tell us they need to understand what are the socially and environmentally sustainable cities, how to create them and be part of that. But to engage them, they need to understand. That's why we really first need to speak to them and to address them.
It sounds like great fun. And look, I'm sure we're going to catch up later on as we continue to cover you guys at COP. And it's been a pleasure to finally get you here. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And it would be a pleasure to catch up and tell you more about COP28.